Welcome to our daily reflection for this Friday, August 29th. And today is the memorial of the Passion of St. John the Baptist. And there's really a thread that unites these readings, believe it or not. The first reading, as we're continuing on in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. And then the Gospel, which is about the beheading of John the Baptist. And the angle I want to take with the Gospel reflects with the focuses on the first reading, where Paul says to the Thessalonians, very simply, this is the will of God, right? What does God will? Your holiness. And of course, that was the major theme of the Second Vatican Council, the universal call to holiness, that not just priests and religious are called to holiness, but all the laity are called to be holy. This is God's will for us. And then Paul then zooms in on the key aspect of that holiness in his mind pastorally for the Thessalonians, for that community, and that is going to be their sexual holiness, that they have to avoid sexual immorality and impurity. And that is going to be imperative for them to fulfill the will of God in their lives, to be holy. And that's the biggest temptation, it would seem, that Paul sees for the Thessalonians. And that fits what we see in the gospel reading, because Paul's going to go on and I'll say, if you take a spouse, basically the marital embrace, do it with holiness and honor, not in lustful passion, right? Don't let your passions control you. Let honor, let dignity, let love, and let the marital embrace be a reflection of that rather than on one's simple passions. And this is the will of God. This isn't just simply a nice to do. It is the will of God. And he said, whoever disregards this disregards not human beings, but God. So Paul's adding to the gravity of this, because a lot of people like to basically trivialize the moral and sexual morality of the church. They did in Paul's day, they do in our day, where they try to make it seem trivial. And Paul's saying there's nothing trivial about sexual immorality. He's very serious about that. And of course, you can see how serious the consequences can be in the gospel reading, because what do we have is Herod, who knows that John the Baptist is a holy man and a prophet. And he even likes to listen to him, even though there's a hard message for Herod. But the problem is, Herod can be a hearer of the word, but he's not a doer of the word, which puts his salvation in great, great jeopardy. Why? Because of his passions. And he's taken his brother's wife, because she's beautiful, Herodias, and then again, moved by his base passions, as he sees Herodias' daughter perform a dance that's very sensual, that gets him to make a major rash oath. He then will execute John the Baptist, because that's what Herodias and her daughter will do. And Herodias and her daughter are beautiful women who know how to manipulate men with their beauty. And this is, again, a danger of being immodest, not being honorable, not being holy, but again, being in the flesh and using the flesh to arouse others' passions and one's own. And so this is what we see, the casualty. Herod's lack of chastity leads him to kill the prophet of God, John the Baptist. And so you think, again, this is not a small thing to fail in chastity. It leads to one's undoing in many other areas as well, but you lose the grace of God when you lose chastity. And then that makes you fall for anything else and everything else. It's not just that, the failure of or impurity is not bad enough on its own, but it leads to other weaknesses as well. So Paul and the example of John the Baptist and the anti-example of Herod show us the importance of purity. It gives us freedom to do the will of God, without which we are slaves in our soul, and our spirit becomes slave to our passions, to the lowest form of our body, and we want to be free from that. So let's ask God for the grace to live freely and chastely. We pray for that. May the Lord bless and keep you.